the Galactic Empire was not accustomed to fear. For millennia it had expanded across the spiral arms of the galaxy, devouring worlds and subjugating species until its banners hung in every major star system. Its rulers believed in absolute order enforced through overwhelming power, and when rumors of disobedience arose, they were crushed swiftly and brutally. Yet even in this sprawling dominion, whispers had begun to circulate about one world that refused to bend completely: Earth. At first, humans were tolerated, almost dismissed. A small, turbulent species from an unremarkable star, their technology lagged centuries behind the core worlds, their fleets were thin, their colonies barely self-sustaining. And yet, reports trickled in that did not align with the narrative of insignificance. Human traders who outwitted contract law specialists bred on 3 worlds of jurisprudence. Human soldiers who fought cornered battles to the last breath, forcing enemies to retreat against all expectation. Human explorers who survived planets declared uninhabitable by more advanced species. The Empire noticed, and unease began to grow. Among the highest levels of command, unease quickly transformed into strategy. The calculus was simple: unchecked, humanity's defiance would fester into rebellion. Rebellion in one corner of the galaxy often metastasized elsewhere. The Empire had learned long ago that the surest way to maintain order was to extinguish sparks before they became flames. So a decision was made, cold and bureaucratic. Humanity needed a lesson in humility, and the lesson would begin with silence at the top. The tool chosen for this work was not the Empire's fleets or legions but something more precise, more final. The assassins. They were a weapon designed for situations where brute force was unnecessary or unwise. Taken as children from across conquered worlds, augmented with forbidden technologies, conditioned through decades of psychological molding, they were death incarnate. Their skin adapted to every spectrum of light, rendering them invisible. Their muscles were laced with synthetic fibers capable of tearing steel. Their senses were tuned to vibrations in air and stone, detecting heartbeats through walls. And above all, their minds were programmed to kill without hesitation. Their legends were whispered across dozens of species. A planetary governor who dared to question tribute vanished from his chambers, body never found. A rebel admiral's flagship went dark during a battle, every crew member slain without alarm. These were the tales meant to remind subjects that no defiance could escape the Empire's reach. The assassins did not fail. This squad, hand-picked for the mission against Earth, numbered 7. Each was a specialist, their skills sharpened into different edges of the same blade. One could infiltrate digital networks with a thought, rewriting systems as easily as breathing. Another was a master of poisons derived from alien flora, capable of killing silently in seconds. Their leader, a towering figure armored with layers of bioceramic bone, had ended wars by his own hand. To them, Earth was not a challenge, it was a formality. In the halls of the Imperial Senate, officials signed off on the operation without ceremony. To them, it was as mundane as approving a trade levy. Assassination was not seen as dishonor, it was efficiency. Why waste fleets and armies when a knife in the dark would suffice? Within days, the squad was already en route, moving between stars under the cover of classified orders. They spoke little as their ship cut through the void, but when they did, it was laced with arrogance. To the assassins, humans were an anomaly, but not a dangerous one. Fragile bodies, outdated weapons, tribal politics dressed as governance. The only interesting factor was that humans still clung to archaic traditions of combat, primitive arts that had no place in the modern galaxy. A curiosity, nothing more. Yet beneath their confidence was the shadow of the Empire's concern. It was not technology that unsettled the ruling council, nor numbers, nor resources. It was unpredictability. The Empire prided itself on understanding its subjects, cataloging every strength and weakness. But humans resisted neat categorization. They adapted too quickly, improvised too recklessly, survived too stubbornly. The Empire could map out 1,000 battle simulations, and the humans would still find a way to break the script. And so the assassins were dispatched, not to conquer, but to deliver a message carved in blood. Humanity would learn what it meant to cross the will of the Empire. The squad's confidence was unshaken. For them, this mission would be another entry in their long record of flawless operations. Earth would soon discover that when the Empire whispered death, it came silently, efficiently, and without fail. But history rarely unfolds the way empires intend. On Earth, the news of the Empire's intentions arrived not through open declaration but through intercepted whispers. Intelligence networks had caught fragments of coded transmissions, fragments that spoke of an impending strike, one too precise to involve fleets. Analysts understood quickly: assassins were coming. The Empire would not bother with fleets unless they intended extermination. This was a surgical message. Political leaders debated endlessly, some advocating for fortification, others for diplomacy, but the decision ultimately fell to a council of defense advisors who understood the true nature of the threat. Against shadows, walls and fleets meant nothing. Against assassins, only a shadow could answer. The choice was not obvious. Earth possessed no cadre of genetic supersoldiers, no cybernetic killers engineered in secret laboratories. What Earth had was history, centuries of traditions devoted to war, survival, and silence. In a vault beneath Kyoto, a man lived whose lineage stretched back through countless generations, each sworn to the same ancient discipline. His family had survived the rise and fall of empires not by brute force but by patience, misdirection, and a mastery of concealment. He was not advertised, not celebrated. To most of the world, he was a rumor. But those who knew of him understood one thing: he was the last true ninja. His training had begun in childhood, not through implants or chemical enhancements, but through rigorous practice that demanded total control of mind and body. Hours of meditation carved calm into his spirit. Endless drills with simple weapons honed muscle memory until movements became instinct. He learned to read sound as language, to measure silence as carefully as breath, to vanish not through technology but through awareness. Where others sought strength in augmentations, he built endurance in the mind, forging a discipline no machine could replicate. The council summoned him without ceremony. He arrived without guards, without entourage, dressed simply, carrying only the tools of his art: steel forged by hand, powders ground from earth, ropes and hooks that looked archaic in an age of plasma rifles. When the situation was explained, he did not ask why he had been chosen. He simply listened, and when silence settled, he nodded once. The task was impossible by design, but impossibility had never been an obstacle in his lineage. What set him apart was not only skill, but perspective. To the Empire, warfare was measured in metrics: kill counts, ship tonnage, territory seized. To him, combat was art, and art required creativity, adaptability, subtlety. His weapons were extensions of his will, tools meant not for brute destruction but for manipulation. He did not confront strength head-on. He turned strength into weakness by exploiting assumptions. The assassins would expect resistance shaped like their own training: squads, weapons, strategies defined by technology. They would never expect a man whose greatest power was silence. In preparation, he studied reports of the assassins. Every detail mattered: their reliance on biosensors, their augmented vision, their tendency to work as a pack. He noted not only their strengths but also the complacency those strengths bred. Technology dulled instinct. Reliance on enhancement dulled awareness. He understood that arrogance was their most exploitable weakness. And arrogance was something no training could erase. When asked what tools he required, he requested nothing more than passage and silence. No armies, no ships bristling with weapons, no elaborate strategies. He carried only the implements of his craft: blades sharpened to molecular edges, powders that blinded or burned, and the discipline of centuries encoded in every gesture. To the council, it seemed reckless. To him, it was inevitable. He was not chosen because he was stronger than the assassins. He was chosen because he was different, because he represented a form of warfare alien to the Empire's understanding. He embodied unpredictability, and unpredictability was what the Empire feared most. For the first time, humanity had decided not to meet the Empire on its terms, but on their own. Departure came quietly. He left Earth without speeches or farewells, vanishing into the folds of classified transport. Even those who authorized the mission doubted his chances. But doubt was irrelevant to him. His task was not to match the assassins blow for blow. His task was to remind the Empire of something it had forgotten, that humans were not predictable, not controllable, and not bound by the calculations of empires. In the stillness of space, as his vessel slipped between the stars, he prepared in silence. Not with machines, but with meditation. Not with algorithms, but with intuition. He sharpened his blades, breathed deeply, and waited. Across the galaxy, 7 assassins believed they hunted prey. What they did not yet know was that Earth had sent something far older, far quieter, and far deadlier than they could imagine. The meeting between the assassins and their intended prey was never going to unfold as the Empire had envisioned. The assassins moved as they always did, silent, confident, certain of their superiority. They had rehearsed the kill in their minds before they ever arrived. But from the moment they entered the chosen ground, something was wrong. They were hunters by design, yet unease gnawed at them, an unfamiliar pressure that had no source they could identify. It was as though the environment itself resisted them, bending in ways they could not quantify. They were trained to detect the rhythm of fear in their targets, the quickening of heartbeats, the trembling in breath. But instead they found absence. No trail of panic, no anxious movements to exploit. What unsettled them most was the realization that they were not alone in the shadows. The darkness they used to cloak themselves did not yield to their control. It was already claimed. The ninja had arrived before them, and his presence was not marked by noise or signal but by the subtle redirection of space itself. Every sound was measured, every surface manipulated, every silence sculpted to shape their perceptions. Where they expected control, they found distortion. Their enhanced optics returned static, their scanners looped false readings, their instincts warned of dangers they could not locate. For the first time, the assassins hesitated. One of them broke formation, convinced he had caught movement on the periphery. It was a mistake born of arrogance. The ninja required no weapon larger than silence. A shift in pressure, a calculated strike, and the assassin's body fell without alarm. The others noticed only absence where their comrade had been, absence that their systems insisted was impossible. Panic flickered, faint but undeniable. The remaining assassins spread wider, their leader barking orders in clipped tones. Precision faltered under the weight of uncertainty. Their strengths, once overwhelming, became chains. Augmented senses fed them too much data, every flicker of movement amplified, every echo magnified into threats. They began to fight the shadows themselves. The ninja moved with patience. He was not faster than them, nor stronger, but he was deliberate. Each step calculated to exploit their reliance on enhancement. He knew they trusted their machines more than their instincts, so he fed the machines falsehoods. A displaced fragment of metal clattering in the distance. A breath released at the precise frequency to trip their auditory sensors. They turned on illusions while the true danger slid closer. Another assassin fell, throat cut so cleanly that his death registered only as a sudden silence in the comms. Their leader tightened formation, forcing them back to back, but it only magnified their fear. They were killers bred to inspire dread, yet dread now consumed them. The ninja had inverted the balance. They were prey, and they knew it. The assassins attempted countermeasures, activating energy bursts to burn out interference, flooding corridors with light to banish darkness. None of it mattered. The ninja did not need the absence of light. He needed only their overconfidence. Each countermeasure became another predictable action, another opportunity to exploit. Where they tried to overwhelm the environment, he simply used simplicity to cut through. The deaths were not theatrical. They were precise, surgical, and inevitable. Each time the squad reacted, one fewer voice remained. By the fourth body, desperation had replaced arrogance. Their leader cursed in languages older than their genetic modifications, demanding focus, but discipline had already collapsed. The ninja advanced, never rushing, never hesitating. His silence was more terrifying than their most violent attack. It was not the speed of their deaths that unnerved them, but the inevitability. Against armies, they had triumphed. Against fleets, they had prevailed. But against one man armed with nothing more than patience and tradition, their entire doctrine unraveled. At last, only two remained, the leader and his most trusted subordinate. They moved with fury now, abandoning stealth, trying to draw the unseen enemy into confrontation. But confrontation was not his art. Their strikes met only air, their senses overwhelmed with noise of their own making. And then the subordinate's body stiffened, blade piercing through armor that should have been impenetrable, collapsed without ceremony. The leader stood alone. For the first time in centuries, he understood fear in its purest form. Not fear of death, he had long accepted mortality, but fear of the unknown. His enhancements, his weapons, his training meant nothing against something that refused to conform to his expectations. He was a creature of certainty, and certainty had abandoned him. The ninja's presence closed in, as quiet as breath. The Empire's perfect weapon, forged through generations of conquest, realized in his final moments that perfection was brittle. What humans wielded was not perfection, but unpredictability, and unpredictability was the most dangerous weapon in existence. News traveled faster than ships in the Empire. Whispers of the assassin's failures spread through channels thought secure, slipping into the ears of governors, merchants, and military officers alike. At first, the rumors were dismissed. Assassins did not fail. Their record was the bedrock of imperial intimidation. Yet the whispers grew louder, carrying details that could not be fabricated, encrypted status updates abruptly cut off, mission trackers registering team members one by one as lost, until only silence remained. The Imperial Council convened in hushed urgency. They had dispatched 7 of their most perfected instruments to eliminate a single human agent, and not one had returned. The sheer improbability of it forced even the most arrogant senators into unease. Their empire had crushed fleets, leveled civilizations, and yet this minor world had somehow turned aside their sharpest blade. What unsettled them most was not the defeat itself, but the unknown mechanism behind it. A failed fleet could be explained through numbers. A failed assassin squad suggested something deeper, something unquantifiable. Commanders demanded data. Surveillance packets were decrypted and examined frame by frame. All they saw were brief static bursts, sudden voids in transmission, and heartbeats cut short. No clear adversary ever appeared on the recordings, only hints of motion, shadows where none should be, and then the sudden termination of life signs. The images bred more fear than clarity. The unknown was more terrifying than open force. Across the core worlds, speculation festered. Some claimed humans possessed secret technologies hidden from Imperial surveyors, devices capable of cloaking entire individuals from advanced sensors. Others whispered of biological mutations unique to Earth, adaptations the Empire had not catalogued. The more cautious admitted a simpler, more troubling possibility, that humans had mastered methods of war outside the scope of modern understanding. The very thought shook the Empire's confidence. Among the conquered species, the story ignited quietly spreading hope. If humanity could strike fear into the Empire, perhaps others could resist. Colonies long silenced by oppression began exchanging covert messages, emboldened by the possibility that the Empire was not invincible. The chain of control that held the galaxy together trembled, not from fleets destroyed or planets liberated, but from the psychological weight of a single human victory. Meanwhile, the ninja advanced deeper into Imperial space. His purpose was not conquest but dismantling the myth of Imperial inevitability. Each step he took sent ripples through the vast machinery of power. The Empire had relied for centuries on the perception of control, on the belief that resistance was futile. That perception now cracked. Every official who heard the rumors measured their own vulnerability. If assassins could fall, then anyone could. What set humanity apart was beginning to crystallize in the minds of the Empire's thinkers. Their power had always come from prediction, from precise analysis of species, economies, and technologies. But humans thrived on improvisation. They did not simply adapt, they embraced uncertainty as an ally. Where other species faltered without order, humans created opportunity in chaos. Their unpredictability was not a flaw, It was their greatest strength. The Empire attempted to reassert dominance. Declarations were issued denouncing the rumors as lies. Propaganda channels flooded broadcasts with fabricated footage of assassins triumphant, showing human figures executed without mercy. But the more they insisted, the less they were believed. In private, citizens trusted the whispers. Fear of humanity became a quiet obsession, a contagion the Empire could not contain. Officials debated drastic action. Some demanded the eradication of Earth itself, scorched from orbit as an example to the rest of the galaxy. Yet hesitation prevailed. If one man could unravel their most elite killers, what unexpected response might humanity unleash if their entire species was threatened? The calculus had shifted. Earth was no longer a trivial subject, it had become a potential existential hazard. Within hidden chambers, analysts mapped every possible trajectory. They considered Earth's alliances, its colonies, its culture. The more they studied, the less certain they became. Every time they believed they had charted humanity's limits, new anomalies appeared. It was as though humanity thrived in defiance of classification. The Council, for all its pride, understood one thing clearly: fear had taken root within their dominion, and fear was corrosive. Once subjects believed the Empire could bleed, control could never be fully restored. Humanity had not destroyed fleets or toppled planets, yet they had inflicted a wound far more dangerous, a wound to the illusion of invincibility. And the ninja, moving unseen through the Empire's vast reach, had become the embodiment of that wound. He was not a conqueror, not a soldier in uniform, but a whisper that grew louder with every retelling, the story of a single human who defied the greatest assassins in the galaxy and prevailed. That story was now unstoppable, and no edict, no propaganda, no fleet could erase it. The last assassin lived long enough to face what his comrades could not, the weight of inevitability. He was bred for certainty, trained to believe in superiority, but his enhancements had betrayed him. Every sensor that once promised clarity now screamed with false readings, every instinct honed to perfection drowned beneath confusion. Against an opponent who refused to follow rules, his mastery meant nothing. The ninja did not overpower him, he dismantled the very foundation of his confidence. Each moment extended not as combat but as revelation, the realization that a human, unaugmented by the Empire's methods, could strike deeper than any engineered killer. The end, when it came, was not marked by spectacle. It was quiet, absolute, and final. The leader's death carried no grandeur, no ceremony, only silence. And in that silence, the Empire's greatest certainty shattered. The squad designed to embody fear had been extinguished by the very species they had been sent to humiliate. What lingered afterward was not merely defeat, but transformation. A message had been carved into the fabric of imperial power: humans could not be measured by the same metrics as others. When word of the final death reached the highest echelons of the Empire, reactions varied. Some were paralyzed by disbelief, clinging to denial as if refusal could restore the lost order. Others saw clearly what had been revealed and felt a cold dread settle over them. Their most perfected weapon had been broken not by armies or fleets, but by one man who carried traditions older than the Empire itself. That truth was inescapable. The Council attempted to contain the fallout. Official records were sealed, reports buried beneath layers of classification, but suppression only sharpened the rumor. The more they tried to silence the story, the further it spread. Soldiers whispered of it in barracks, merchants spoke of it in coded exchanges, slaves repeated it in hushed tones. The myth of invincibility had collapsed, and myths, once broken, could not be repaired. Humanity's image shifted overnight. They were no longer dismissed as provincial upstarts. They were reimagined as dangerous anomalies, a species capable of wielding unpredictability as a weapon sharper than any blade. Where other worlds bent beneath the Empire's weight, humanity twisted, adapted, resisted. And that resistance now had a face, or rather, the memory of a face unseen. For Earth itself, the consequences were profound. Leaders who had once argued over compliance or rebellion now understood that survival lay not in mimicry of the Empire's methods, but in the cultivation of their own uniqueness. They could not outmatch imperial fleets, but they could unsettle the Empire by reminding it that humans fought in ways no strategist could predict. The ninja had shown that strength did not come from scale, but from spirit. Across the stars, species long resigned to submission began to reconsider. If one human could topple the Empire's assassins, what might they achieve if they embraced their own forgotten traditions? Hope sparked in hidden places, fragile but alive. The Empire felt the tremors of that hope and recognized them as the first cracks of rebellion. For the ninja himself, there was no triumphal return, no parade or recognition. His purpose had never been glory. His task was silence, and in silence he remained. He had done what needed to be done, nothing more. Yet his act transcended him, becoming a story the Empire could not erase. In every retelling, he grew larger than life, not because of embellishment, but because his simplicity defied exaggeration. He had not needed technology, nor armies, nor declarations. He had needed only patience, discipline, and resolve. The Empire adjusted its strategies, wary now of pushing humanity too far. Their analysts urged caution, warning that what they faced was not a conventional enemy but something far more dangerous, a species that thrived on the unthinkable. The Council, for all its pride, understood enough to hesitate. That hesitation was victory in itself. In the end, the lesson was not about one battle or one man. It was about the nature of humanity. Where empires sought control, humans embraced chaos. Where others depended on certainty, humans thrived in uncertainty. They did not win because they were stronger, or faster, or more advanced. They won because they refused to be defined by the limitations others imposed on them. And so the story endured, that when the most powerful empire in the galaxy sent its deadliest assassins to remind Earth of its place, Earth answered not with fleets or weapons, but with a single figure who moved in silence. In that silence, the Empire discovered a truth more frightening than war, that humans, unpredictable and indomitable, would never be ruled by fear.